And good morning to you. It is Saturday, June the 28th. We're watching Capitol Hill this morning, where Senate Republicans are aiming to begin voting today on Donald Trump's sweeping spending bill. The latest 940 pages in all was released overnight. Spoiler alert, this new Senate version extends tax cuts that disproportionately benefit the rich and pays for them by slashing crucial medical and nutrition programs that are likely to reverberate throughout the economy. We're going to have much more on where this bill stands, what's hidden in those 940 pages, and the strategy that Democrats are reportedly considering to fight its final passage. But we begin this hour with another dangerous power grab by Donald Trump, facilitated once again by the United States Supreme Court. The decision handed down by the supermajority conservatives yesterday is as consequential and as dangerous as their decision to hand Donald Trump criminal immunity last year. The question before the justices was whether federal courts and judges can stop a president from enforcing unconstitutional policies before those policies do real irreversible harm. And then now the answer is mostly they can't. A universal injunction, it's an order issued by a federal judge called a circuit court judge, that blocks a potentially unconstitutional policy from taking effect nationwide until the courts can deliberate and rule on its legality. And what the conservative justices did yesterday to undermine nationwide injunctions may have profound and dangerous consequences for every American, not just immigrants, or those who will suffer directly from any potential unlawful federal edict. The case is called Trump v. CASA. And at its center, it's Trump's attempt to end birthright citizenship by executive order, to take away a right that is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment since 1868, and decades thereafter confirmed by the Supreme Court. Every lower court that reviewed Trump's order agreed that it was almost certainly unconstitutional, so they did what courts have long done when the government threatens to break the law in a way that would harm thousands or millions. They issued injunctions that would apply across the land. These universal injunctions are not radical tools. They're basic guardrails meant to stop illegal policies from wreaking havoc while courts decide the merits of the issue. But on Friday, the Supreme Court's super conservative majority, or conservative supermajority, I say, took that tool away. They ruled that in most cases, federal judges can no longer issue universal injunctions to block a president's actions. In practical terms, the ruling temporarily allows the Trump administration's executive order attacking birthright citizenship to take effect after 30 days. Don't get caught up on that, because the consequences of this thing go far beyond birthright citizenship. By limiting judges' ability to use universal injunctions, the Supreme Court is effectively saying that whatever policy Donald Trump enacts, it cannot be blocked nationwide while courts decide whether or not that policy is legal. The court has, in its own way, crippled its federal judges. As Bulwark editor Jonathan V. Last put it, quote, by constructing this new idea that universal stays are now verboten, they tell themselves that they have handed Trump a tactical victory but set him up for a strategic defeat on the substance of his executive order later on. The Supreme Court majority thinks it's being clever by playing within the rules. They're actually being fools, because Trump isn't playing within the rules, and the government has shown already, repeatedly, that it will break the law. But it turns out that this court is so feckless that it is enabling the fascist takeover while imagining that it's playing some very long game against it, end quote. Now think about what this decision means in real life. As Justice Sonia Sotomayor warned in her dissent, Trump's birthright citizenship order could, quote, wrench newborns from the arms of parents lawfully in the United States, end quote. And under this ruling, courts can only protect the specific families or groups and states who were plaintiffs in the lawsuit, or anyone else lucky enough, fast enough to file their own case and hire a lawyer. Everyone else, too bad. And it doesn't stop at birthright citizenship. Imagine a president signing an executive order stripping voting rights from black citizens, or seizing guns only from Democrats, or banning Muslims from gathering to worship. Under Friday's ruling, a judge cannot block those orders across the country. At best, they can block them only for the plaintiffs who are before them, leaving everyone else exposed while lawsuits crawl through the courts, maybe taking years. Justice Sotomayor put it bluntly, no right is safe in the new legal regime that the court creates, end quote. Friday's ruling makes the presidency even less accountable. It does so at the worst possible moment. Today, we have a president who brags that judges can't stop him, who threatens to send the military against protesters, who now enjoys near total immunity from prosecution for crimes that are committed while in office. And Trump has shown over and over and over again that he can always make things worse, warping executive power to its ugliest extremes. And there's an added cruel twist, in case this hasn't been enough for you. Justice Amy Coney Barrett's opinion suggests that courts could still protect people by certifying nationwide class action lawsuits. But in the same breath, other conservative justices warn lower courts not to certify those class actions too easily. There's also the fact that the court itself in recent years had made it more difficult for plaintiffs to obtain class action status. So it's all a shell game. The court points to other tools and then makes sure that those tools are nearly impossible to use. In the end, this isn't just a fight over an old legal tool. It's a fight over whether any of our constitutional rights can be turned into a lever of power by whomever sits in the Oval Office. Historically, universal injunctions were not a controversial thing. Republican and Democratic presidents hated them when they lost, but accepted them as part of how courts keep presidents honest. Now the court's conservative supermajority has turned a centuries-old check on executive overreach, as Justice Sotomayor put it, into an open invitation for the government to bypass the Constitution. It's not much comfort to think that the court will eventually do the right thing and reaffirm the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenships. Most experts believe that in the end, the court will probably do that. But the damage is done in the meantime, and it cannot always be undone. Children could be denied citizenship. Families could be torn apart. People could be left stateless. Dangerous precedents set for even bolder attacks on rights that we once thought were permanent. There was a time when many Americans had hoped the Supreme Court would save us from authoritarianism, acting as the check that the framers intended. But instead, the nation's highest court is making authoritarianism possible by dismantling the very tools meant to stop it. And in doing so, the court has left every right we hold dear hanging by a thinner thread than most of us ever imagined. In a scathing piece for The Nation, my next guest, Elie Mystal, writes, quote, "If ever there was a reason to have a nationwide injunction, it would be a situation where a president brazenly refuses to follow the most important amendment ever inserted into the Constitution. Claiming it's only about nationwide injunctions is like claiming the tail wags the dog. I've said repeatedly that the courts will not save us from Trump and will not require him to follow the law," end quote.